Like I've said before, a lot of those critics over at Rotten Tomatoes, they don't really like horror movies like we do. So today, I'm going to go through how Rotten Tomatoes ranks the entire Evil Dead franchise and whether or not I agree with it. Okay, so just a reminder, this ranking will be sorted by the lowest tomato meter score to the highest tomato meter score. So how the hell does Rotten Tomatoes rank the entire Evil Dead franchise? Well, coming in last place at number 5 is going to be Evil Dead from 2013, the remake. Coming in with a 63% tomato meter score and a 64% audience score. The critics' consensus for this one goes, it may lack the absurd humor that underlined the original, but the new look Evil Dead compensates with brutal terror, gory scares, and gleefully bloody violence. Yeah, this movie definitely lacks the humor from the original. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, there is a lot of gore in this movie, which we'll talk all about. And you guys know what we like to do with the movies that come in last place. I like to go ahead and read a few critic reviews as well really fast. So the first critic said this movie was fresh. And they said director Fede Alvarez digs deep into the genre's familiar bag of tricks, but concocts a movie that is a pretty bloody good time. And yeah, there's definitely some things in this movie that is a good time. But yeah, Fede Alvarez, kind of like he did with Alien Romulus, definitely digs deep into the genre's kind of familiar bag of tricks. There's not a lot of originality in this movie. Some of the things are executed very well, which I'll talk about, but yeah, I mean, I do agree with some of that stuff that the critics said right there. So the next critic came in and said this movie was rotten. They just went ahead and gave this movie a 1.5 out of 4, the Evil Dead remake. And they said, it's just another bland gore fest that plays like the reheated remains of far better films that have come before. And I do agree with that to a certain extent. Yes, it is a gore fest. But there's a ton of gore that is pulled off very well in this movie. But I do agree with a lot of that just in the fact of there's not a lot of originality here. There's a lot of things that are bland here. This movie doesn't really like push the genre forward in any sort of a way. As far as story goes and other things like that, there's just not much. It's kind of just reheated like they said. All right, 2 more really fast. The next critic said this movie was fresh, but they kind of gave it a 6.5 out of 10. So they didn't love it, but still, they said, whilst the effects are spot on and Levy gives a performance that could define her career, the film never quite nails what made the originals such classics. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, this movie just doesn't have like the unique feel to it like the original movies do. But the next critic said this movie was rotten and they gave it a 1 out of 5. And they said the screenplay is abysmal. The performances are lifeless, and Alvarez's direction does nothing but rip pages out of Raimi's playbook. Definitely, there's just a lot of recycled content from the original 2 movies here. I do agree that the screenplay is not great, especially just as far as the dialogue and the script goes. Not all of that is probably in the screenplay, but still, some of the dialogue here and the way the characters talk to each other just doesn't really seem like, you know, the way people actually really talk to each other, which always comes off as something distracting to me. I never like that. You guys don't like that either. It's not good. I also think I would agree the performances are lifeless. Yeah, I mean, the performances and the characters are pretty bland, which we'll talk more about. So right away, though, with this movie, right from the jump, you can tell this is just a complete 180 from the original. You know, if you're expecting like humor and you're expecting a unique feel to it, or just not really like that dark of a movie that's going to be kind of funny and ridiculous and schlocky, but also gory, this is going to be pretty serious. Like right off the bat, we see this guy burn his own daughter because she turned into a demon, and you're like, okay. Shit, I mean, that's kind of scary and gruesome. But yeah, all right, let's see what Fede Alvarez is going to do here. And then we transport to kind of a familiar location. Yeah, we're with these like 20-something-year-olds. This is kind of looking like the original in some ways. And immediately I'm like, listen, guys, have you never seen a horror movie or heard about a horror movie or heard about scary stories in your entire life? Never read from the creepy ass book. Come on, guys, especially in a scary ass cabin. That is just a terrible idea. Even the book even says, leave this book alone. What are you doing? But, you know, I mean, I guess it's the same dumbass guy from the movie X as well. So he's probably going to get what's coming to him in this one as well. But yeah, in this movie, the entire movie does look great. From a technical standpoint, that is pulled off very well. I like the aesthetic of it. I like the cabin tucked away, just like the original 2 movies. And I like that aspect of it, the visuals and everything like that. The gore is definitely juicy and nasty and is gonna make you squeamish. I mean, at the end of the movie, towards the end, when Mia pulls her own arm off when it's trapped underneath the car, it's like with the blood rain and all of that. Damn, that is pretty crazy. Most of this movie to me though just feels like cheap, generic scares. We're constantly cutting to these quick shots of demons, which just feels overdone, overplayed, and just kind of, like I said, feels cheap and generic to me. And speaking of generic, the cast in this movie feels about as generic as you can possibly get. And in a horror movie, you don't need to like go out and hire these big A-list actors. You can still find people who are memorable, charismatic, unique, or bring something unique to the table, right? But in this movie, I just feel like they play it so safe with every character in the movie. Even the dialogue just feels so safe and generic, like almost like it's written by AI or something like that. I mean, no one really does anything really unique or quirky or memorable. It's just like this safe, bland cast, in my opinion, just what the characters do throughout the movie. Whereas, of course, in the original, especially with Ash, I was sitting there watching the movie like, okay, this is a character I immediately like. He has this charisma. He has something unique about him. I mean, obviously, the jawline is pretty on point, but he has this character that draws you into the story and makes you want to just watch more. Now, I will say, if you have not seen the original movie or the original 2 movies, I think this movie will work a lot better for you because it will feel kind of a little bit fresh and like a unique story. But in comparison to the original movies, I just don't think it holds up at all. And as far as just remakes go, just in general, to me, when I look at a great horror remake, it has to do at least one thing top notch, in my opinion. There has to be something great about it. The Texas Chainsaw remake, a great Leatherface, in my opinion, with Andrew Brzezinski. Jessica Biel, a great final girl, one of the best in the genre in some ways. I mean, John Carpenter's The Thing, essentially a remake of The Thing from Another World. I mean, you've got Kurt Russell, some of the best practical effects in horror history. And yeah, that's kind of a high bar. That's probably not fair to this movie, but when I think about just great remakes, and I hear some people talk about this movie as being a great remake, to me though, this movie just doesn't do anything that's great and that will really kind of stand the test of time, in my opinion, in the genre. Yes, this movie has some good things about it. Yeah, the gore is pulled off pretty damn well at times, and I guess sort of memorable, but in the end, there's nothing really like outstanding about this movie. Like at the end of the movie, when the guy had to bury his sister Mia, did I really feel anything or really care at all about that moment? No, not really. Now, don't get me wrong, this movie isn't bad. I mean, it's pretty fun at times, but it's mostly just a generic movie without really adding anything really unique to the franchise, in my opinion, other than just kind of modernizing the gore. But anyways, do I agree with Rotten Tomatoes having the remake at last, number 5 on the list? I actually disagree. I have the remake from 2013 at number 4 in the franchise. All right, up next at number 4 is going to be Army of Darkness from 1992 with a 68% tomato meter score and an 87% audience score. The critics' consensus goes, some of the evil magic is gone as this trilogy capper dispenses with most of the scares, but Bruce Campbell's hammy charm and Sam Raimi's homage to classic visual effects make for a fun enough adventure. And yeah, this movie is mostly like this medieval kind of just comedy in a lot of ways. So yeah, they ditch most of the scares without a doubt. But yes, there is so much fun to be had in this movie. But yeah, yo, she-bitch, let's go. And I mean, Ash is being thrown into 1300 AD. And to me, I'm like, okay, I'm sitting in my chair like this is about to get pretty crazy. And I am ready for it. I also like in this movie, we get a little bit more of a backstory on Ash's character, what type of a guy he is. He worked in this department store called S-Mart, Shop S-Mart. You get it? That whole thing? That's kind of fun. But, you know, he comes across as just like a regular dude, like a lot of us. And I love that we're just kind of following this average Joe who's just thrown into some wild shit. And yeah, like a lot of the movies in this franchise, we get another one of these recaps, which I can't lie, when I'm watching this, I'm getting a little tired of seeing like the recap over and over again, which I get, you know, especially in the 80s and 90s and stuff, was a bit of a trope without a doubt. But what's weird too in this movie, for the second time in a row, they're kind of just changing the ending on the previous movie for us. It's just kind of confusing and kind of weird. They're just like, here, they don't show Ash killing the Deadite, and then like everybody's kind of hailing him and saying like, oh, you know, our savior is here. In this one, they're kind of just like, bullshit. He's not the guy that they prophesized about, or we prophesized about, or they prophesized about in the book. Throw him in the pit. And I'm just kind of like, wait, what is going on here? But anyways, I don't know about you guys, but I've always kind of thought about what it would be like to bring back some crazy modern technology, like way back when to some other time, and just how that would all go about. And now we kind of do get to see that when we get to see Ash bring back a car, he gets to bring back a chainsaw, he gets to bring back a double barrel shotgun, and we get to see what happens with that. And I do like, though, how Ash just turns up his assholeness, and yeah, that's probably a word that I just made up, but his assholeness in this movie to like a 10. He hates these people, he hates being back in this time, and he makes it loud and clear. He's making fun of them left and right, which I enjoy. Like that moment when he rides home with the book and everyone's like, yay, our savior's back, yay, and he's just like, get the fuck out of my face. But yeah, this movie is an acid trip though. I mean, at one point we get this whole sequence where Ash and these little fairy people are like swan diving into his mouth, and then he grows like a replica of himself out of his shoulder. It is completely ridiculous and silly, but you know, it is fun and definitely something you can laugh about. But yeah, Bruce Campbell once again back as Ash in this movie. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't talked about Ash really that much yet because we haven't gotten into the other movies in the franchise, but yeah, Ash is just great again in this. He's very charismatic. He's somebody who just draws you right in. He's a character that you want to follow. That's why, I mean, he's so iconic. He's such a big reason why the Evil Dead franchise is still making movies and TV shows all these years later, and it's just great. But I will say, as great as Ash is, we're 3 movies in at this point in this movie, and I do wish they would have spent a little bit more time establishing like another mainstay character in the story. This movie is also maybe just like horror's version of The Three Stooges. Well, it's not even really a horror movie, it's more of a comedy movie, but still, you get what I'm saying. But that whole battle with the Army of the Dead, to me, is just a fun time. Yeah, in a silly, ridiculous way, but I do enjoy it. I mean, Ash is over here like using chemistry in the trunk of the car to help make bombs. Things are blowing up all over the place. We got some stop motion animation going on there. Ash turns the car into like this locomotive with a giant fan blade on the front, slicing skeletons up. It is just schlocky 90s cheese, and to me, it's pretty entertaining. And I'll be honest though, I mean, we're 3 movies in and I still don't really know exactly how people turn into demons. I mean, I have my guesses. Even Ash at one point turns into a demon and then turns back into a normal person. Like, I'm kind of confused about that. I mean, I'm sure you hardcore Evil Dead fans will will just basically correct my dumbass in the comments down below. And please do, let me know what goes on here because I'm kind of confused. I have no idea what's happening, but still, regardless, do I agree with Army of Darkness being number 4 in the franchise according to Rotten Tomatoes? I actually disagree. I have Army of Darkness number 2 in the franchise. All right, moving into the top 3. Up next at number 3 is going to be Evil Dead Rise from 2023. Coming in certified fresh with 85% in the tomato meter score and a 76% audience score. The critics' consensus goes, offering just about everything longtime fans could hope for while still managing to carry the franchise forward. Evil Dead Rise is all kinds of groovy. And I would disagree with that. I mean, I don't think it's everything longtime fans could hope for. We're still missing the humor in this movie, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But yeah, so this one also has the audience consensus thing, probably just because it's a newer movie. But the audience consensus goes, Evil Dead Rise's intense horror and inventive gore help make up for a so-so story that downplays the franchise's signature humor. Yes, definitely. I agree with that. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of like gore in this movie and it's inventive and it's done very well. But yeah, the story is definitely so-so without a doubt. So once again, the suits in Hollywood have gifted us a second modern Evil Dead movie that isn't funny at all. I mean, wasn't that really like kind of the entire niche of this franchise? Like over-the-top gore and pure just silliness? Anyway, so we're following this family who's obviously going through a lot. You feel for them, you know? They've been through a lot. Their apartment building is about to be like completely demolished in a month. Like the dad has recently left that they tell us. And then this earthquake hits, which opens up like this big hole in the parking lot. And there's just, where the kids find the book and all that stuff. And there's just a lot of stuff going on with this family. So, you do kind of feel for them. And yeah, once again, we're 5 movies in and another dumbass is summoning evil because why not? Wow. It's so fresh and so unique, guys. But this movie, I mean, it's kind of just a remake of the remake, but instead of a cabin, we're now in this apartment building, and they just replaced like the 20-something-year-olds with like a bunch of young kids who I also kind of just think are pretty annoying and not that great at acting, in my opinion. But yeah, I like the remake though. The visuals in this movie and just the way the visuals are pulled off, just technically this entire movie, the gore, the way the movie looks, are pulled off really well for like a demonic movie. But again, kind of like the remake, I just don't really see anything here that's really all that unique. I guess you could say the gore is a little bit unique. Yeah, it's creative and pulled off really well, like I already mentioned, but you know, to me, just as a personal preference, I mean, if they took this gore and just what they were able to pull off and maybe like as a personal preference, put it into like a pretty solid slasher movie, holy shit, my goodness, that would be a lot of fun. But for this demonic possession kind of, which is not really my favorite subgenre in horror by any means, it's just something to me that just feels so overdone, bland, and isn't all that unique. And I know I did just mention slashers, which is definitely not the most unique or creative subgenre in horror without a doubt, but it's just something that I kind of prefer over this. But yeah, like I said, I mean, the gore and all that kind of stuff is pulled off technically pretty well. And yeah, this is the type of movie that will sell well. I mean, this movie did very well financially. I think the highest grossing movie in the entire franchise, but this is a movie that will do well from a business standpoint. It will sell tickets. You know, let's just throw a bunch of like insane gore into this kind of bland plot. So at least we'll get like a bunch of teenagers in groups to go and see this almost as like a dare or just something crazy to do on a Friday night when they're bored. But for me, someone who's been watching horror for decades, I mean, this type of gore is, like I said, pulled off really well, but it's just not interesting enough to cover up how bland really everything else in the movie is to me, especially the cast. But so yeah, do I agree with Evil Dead Rise being ranked number 3 in the franchise according to Rotten Tomatoes? I don't agree. I have Evil Dead Rise ranked at number 5 in the franchise because, like I said, this movie has great gore, but everything else has just been there, done that. Okay, coming in at number 2 is going to be The Evil Dead, the original from 1981, certified fresh at 86% in the Tomato Meter score and an 84% audience score. The critics' consensus goes so scrappy that it feels illicit as a book found in the woods. The Evil Dead is a stomach-churning achievement in bad taste that marks a startling debut for Wonder Kid Sam Raimi. All right, join us, right? But truly, like, this is the story of when you're young, especially guys, like, don't go out and save some money. Don't try to save too much money renting that super shitty discounted Airbnb, guys, because you never know, like there might be a book straight from the depths of hell somewhere in that basement, hidden somewhere. And especially if the reviews say anything about bodily dismemberment, just don't do it, kids. And to me, right off the bat, the setting for this movie is great. It's a lot of fun. You've got these young kids in an old cabin. They find this tape from what sounds like some sort of like an archaeological excavation with like this Book of the Dead they're talking about. You got the dark rain, the thunder all happening at the same time. I mean, also, whoever did the voiceover for the tape did a great job. It's eerie and it's just a ton of fun. But oh shit, I mean, they are quickly starting to realize as soon as that girl turns into a demon, why this Airbnb was so cheap. You know, the friends over here, like, just completely nuts, stabbing people with pencils. And according to what they're hearing, like, maybe the only way to get out of this whole thing is by bodily dismemberment. It's like, damn it, we might be completely screwed. And yeah, basically right in the middle of this movie is when the horror really ramps up. We've got these demons that we're seeing in all their cheesy 80s just glory. You've got their friend Shelly, who at one point chews their own arm off, which, you know, is fun. It's cool to see. It's hilarious. It's silly. I mean, even clear as day, you can see the makeup prosthetic on the creature's face, like on the chin and all that. It's kind of sticking out. It's cheesy, but, you know, it's fun and it's charming, definitely. And that whole scene when Scott, I mean, hacks this thing to pieces with an axe, that's a pretty damn gory scene. Also a cool little cherry on top that the body that's now dismembered is kind of like still twitching and stuff. You know, it's a very low budget movie, but I gotta give him some props for that. But that whole scene when Ash decides to bury his girlfriend, that's pretty funny to me. At first, he kind of lays her down. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna chainsaw her ass up. And then he sees the necklace and he's like, no, I can't do that. So then he decides to give her like a nice little burial, which just, that entire burial scene just goes completely south for him. She ends up grabbing him out of the grave. She starts scratching the hell out of him. They fight. He ends up cutting her head off with a shovel, which just like flies over, lands perfectly like a nice little trophy on the dirt next to him. Then the music kind of just pauses there for a second, and then her severed head just spews blood like a geyser all over his face. It is so low budget, so cheesy, but it still might be my favorite scene in the entire movie. And I definitely find myself just wanting to find out more about the book, the lore behind the book, and just everything that's going on. I want to find out more about the guy from the tape. And yeah, I definitely also want to follow Ash's story more and just see how that all unfolds. I will say though, kind of the middle part of the movie, right before the horror really kicks up, the movie does drag a little bit for me, but the end of the movie with the body horror, the effects, and just the relentless blood is a great time. Also, you think it's all over and then nope, these demon hands start popping out. It's just a fun ending, especially on this type of a budget. The whole nighttime sequence, though, kind of reminds me a little bit of A Nightmare on Elm Street when Nancy kind of just like emerges to the daylight after this purely like exhausting, crazy night the night before. And yeah, Bruce Campbell is great in this movie. And yeah, really just the effects and the gore and everything like that is pretty fun to me, especially at the end of the movie. It's one of those stories where you can just feel through the screen how exhausted this guy probably is. Just this relentless, crazy ass night. I just picture Ash, emerging from all of this basically unrecognizable because he's just so beaten, dirty, and covered in blood. I mean, the original Evil Dead, it's a fun movie, no doubt. And now I do get the low budget kind of charm that the first Evil Dead movie has, but it's not really a movie to me that I'll go back and kind of make a huge effort to rewatch. I think there's a lot of things in this movie that are pretty generic. It's just kind of a bunch of demons attacking everybody. There's not much else to it. But of course, the effects, the gore, and of course, Ash do make this movie stand out without a doubt. So do I agree with the first Evil Dead movie being number 2 in the franchise according to Rotten Tomatoes? I actually disagree. I actually have the original The Evil Dead at number 1 in the franchise. So there you go. The Evil Dead coming in at number 2 in the franchise according to Rotten Tomatoes. All right, and of course, coming in at number 1 is going to be Evil Dead 2 from 1987, coming in certified fresh at 88% in the Tomato Meter score and an 89% audience score. The critic consensus for this one goes, less a continuation than an outright reimagining, Sam Raimi transforms his horror tale into a comedy of terrors and arguably even improves on the original formula. And yeah, you could say that. This is 10 times the budget of the original, so the gore and everything is going to be done better. It's going to be more excess. So if that's your kind of thing, then yeah, you're going to enjoy this more than the original. So you know what we like to do with movies that also come in first place? We like to read a few critic reviews. So I'll go ahead and do that really fast. The first critic said this movie was fresh and said, Raimi delivers. At this point, I'm not sure whether he's a genius or certifiable. But Evil Dead 2 is the horror equivalent of the hardest drugs there are. It bypasses logic and heads straight for your pleasure centers. And yeah, a lot of people would argue that you have to be on some pretty damn hard drugs to even enjoy this movie because there are some crazy moments. So I get what you're saying there. The second critic said the Evil Dead 2 was rotten, and they said, in the first Evil Dead, Raimi's fast-forward style and Looney Tunes sensibility were the amusing juvenilia of a snappy new talent. To make one film like that may be regarded as an indulgence. To make 2 looks like a serious lack of real ideas. And yeah, I do understand that because there's a lot of things in the second Evil Dead movie that are just completely recycled from the original, of course. But the next critic said this movie was fresh, and they said, no matter how much money Bruce Campbell received to play Ash, one can't help feeling that he was underpaid. One wonders if any leading man or even a stuntman has ever had such a workout. Oh yeah, Bruce just gets beaten to hell in this movie. You can just feel the exhaustion, kind of like the original without a doubt. All right, so the last critic review I want to read, they said this movie was rotten, and they said, unfortunately, more often than not, it's simply a louder, more obnoxious redo of the first film, muddying up the incomplete plot of otherworldly possession and culminating in utter nonsense. Yeah, I mean, it's like the original, but just more in a lot of ways. It's crazier, more over the top. They just implemented so much more comedy into this movie. So if that's your thing, then cool. I do have a good time with this movie, but yeah, we'll talk all about that. But yeah, like I mentioned, it's basically 10 times the budget. You know, the success of the first movie being a cult classic that it is, Raimi was definitely able to secure more money for this movie to have better gore, better effects, more things going on, right? One thing I do enjoy about this movie, and I like, it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me, is we do get more of a backstory. A lot of people enjoy the ambiguity. I don't hate getting some of that information, which is fun. You know, where it came from, the book, 1300 AD is when it kind of disappeared. We also get more of a backstory on the man, from the recording and all of that. We see his wife, that they found this book in a castle, and, I don't mind that. And yeah, the first time I watched this movie, the beginning of this movie definitely threw me off quite a bit. I mean, they're remaking the girlfriend scene, but it's with a different girl because I guess the other girl, come to find out, she was pregnant or something like that when they were filming the movie. But still, I'm like, wait, what is going on here? Things are kind of weird. It's different, but it's also the same. So I'm kind of expecting Ash to maybe, wake up from a dream, a bad dream or something like that. But no, they just carry on from where the first movie left off. And I'm just like, what is going on here? And then Ash is driving away and all of a sudden it turns from daytime to night again, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? And yeah, right off the bat, I could immediately tell where they were going with this higher budget. I mean, they're just leaning into the craziness in this movie. Ash's headless girl emerges from the grave. She starts dancing around naked, pops her head back on, and I'm sitting here like, all right, this is where they're going with this movie. Am I too sober for this? Am I not? I don't know what's going on here, but all right, buckle up. This is where we're going. And I love how Ash is playing the Claw from Liar Liar, but with himself. But that whole scene after Ash cuts his hand off is a crazy scene. I mean, he's fighting with the hand for like 10 minutes, then he starts hysterically laughing. The room is coming alive, and I'm kind of just thinking to myself, is this like the Pineapple Express of horror movies? Like I said earlier, am I too sober for this? I don't even know, but I'm still invested because I know the daughter of the man who found the book is on her way to the cabin to hopefully speak with her dad. And we know, I know watching the movie that when she gets there, it's going to be like, yeah, daddy fucked up. And oh yeah, by the way, mom is dead and she's in the fruit cellar. Oh, and yeah, Henrietta, she is hungry for some souls. But yeah, this whole scene is funny to me, especially when Ash smashes her head with the door and then her eyes pop out and they fly into the girl's mouth. That is what this movie is, right? But yeah, I'm just glad there's some other people showing up to the cabin. There's some other people in the movie because really Ash hasn't seen any other humans since like halfway through the first movie. I also love the Ash demon look in this movie. Oddly, it also kind of in some weird way reminds me of like the vampire design in The Lost Boys. But yeah, the makeup design with Ash and everything with that, it's juicy and it really shows you that the makeup and the budget in this movie is just gonna be a lot better and bigger than the first. And when Ash is fighting that girl's mom on the top floor, she's flying through the air on clearly these wires, they're just going at it. I immediately kind of came to this weird realization that it felt like I was watching an old Super Nintendo video game. There's just something about like the quirkiness of the scene and a lot of scenes in the movie, the choppiness of kind of how it all goes down. And then also the shot of Ash just basically having a chainsaw for an arm. I don't know, it felt like an old Super Nintendo game. And like the first movie, but just on steroids. The end of this movie gives us some crazy visuals. The trees start attacking the house, then Ash gets sucked into this portal, which takes him back in time. When you're watching the movie, you're assuming it's probably to 1300 AD. Ash is then surrounded by all these medieval knights. There's this demon flying through the air, and then he saves the day by using his double barrel shotgun, which obviously blows their mind, and they're all kind of like hailing him, the dude that fell from the sky. And then the movie ends basically just with Ash yelling, "No!" which is an ending that I do like. And one of the biggest reasons why I like this ending is because it finally gets us away from the cabin and just constantly fighting demons over and over and over, which to me was getting pretty repetitive even though we're in the second movie in the franchise. Also, it just leaves me wanting to see where Ash's story goes from here. Yes, it's a wild ending without a doubt, but I'm here for it. And yeah, as you could probably already guess, like I already said, I do disagree with this movie, Evil Dead 2 being number 1 in the franchise, according to Rotten Tomatoes. I actually have Evil Dead 2 at number 3 in the franchise. But thanks so much, everybody, for watching my review, my thoughts on how Rotten Tomatoes ranks the entire Evil Dead franchise. If you want some more content from me, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future content, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. But anyways, everybody, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you all in the next one.